Hello, my name is Turner Hagen, and I'm the Precision Farming Specialist with Jaycox Implement in Laverne, Minnesota. This morning we got a 1200 series planter pulled in the shop, specifically a 1250, and we're going to go through some operational tips and tricks on the Pro 700. So we'll go through the full setup wizard program on the Pro 700, as well as learn how to assign prescriptions and figure out how work conditions work. So let's hop up in the cab and take a look. Alright, so we got the Pro 700 here booted up and in the cab. First thing we'll do is we will run through our full setup wizard. So from your run screen to get to the full setup wizard, we go hit the back button here, and you'll see with the planter hooked up, we'll get this wizards tab that opens up. This should be on all 1200 series planters. Anything that's got an actual monitor behind it or a controller on the planter should have the capability where they have the wizards here. So when we go into the wizards tab, you can see there's a different list, and you can see how some of these have X's behind them and some of them have checks. So when we're done with the full setup, what we'll do is should see that there should be a green check on every single one of these icons here. So the full setup wizard, the time to do that is maybe the first time you hook it up to the tractor, first time ever if you are a new owner to a 1200 series planter, or else it's not bad to go through at the beginning of the season just to make sure everything's set up and checked and ready to go. So we'll start the full setup. So what the wizard is basically a guide to help you get everything set in the Pro 700 so that it will map, plant, and operate correctly for you when you hit the field. So what it's going to do is it's basically going to prompt you to either do a task or ask you certain questions so that it will know how to set up and display which layers and settings and everything we need to adjust. So with this, we just need to make sure that we have the current implement selected. So if we needed to check that, we could go back here, go to Toolbox, go to Implement. Here we can see we got our 1250 front fold selected, 360 inches since this is a 12 row planter on there. That's my implement width. And then it's a towed implement. Most of this stuff will auto-populate when the planter is actually hooked up there. So since that's correct, we can go back and we verify that, so we hit the next button. So the first thing here, it's going to ask you how many total row units you have. Obviously that depends on the planter that you're using. This one happens to be a 12 row planter, but it could be a 16, 24, 36. If you have a split row planter, you would want to enter the total number of row units. So for both rows, when you're planting 15-inch rows there, so that would be like 48 row or 47 row for a 24 row split row planter on that case. So we leave that at 12. So this question is asking, do you tend to use GPS in your operation, such as for mapping, overlap control, or auto guidance? In this situation, we do want to use that, so we'll hit yes. It says, do you intend to use section control or AFS AccuRow clutch control? So this planter is equipped with row clutches, so we will actually want to select yes. If you have no clutches, or even if you have just the hydraulic split control, so half the planter bar has section control because of the two hydraulic drive units, you would still select yes in this situation. Then this one's asking if you tend to use prescriptions for product grade control. In this situation, I do plan to. I do have a prescription that I want to use, so I'll leave it as yes. This is to use the container function for tank products. So with this, what a container function is it basically creates a virtual container, and so what you can do is specify the capacity of that container. And then as you're going through the field, it looks at your as applied rate, and it will actually tell you how much seed or liquid fertilizer or something like that is in your setup. For this situation, we will just leave that selected as no for now, but it is a handy feature. If you do want to reference that, reference your Pro 700 operating guide. Do we tend to do split planter mapping? This would be if you wanted to have two different varieties in each bin. You can leave it as yes and put the same variety in each bin, or you could just leave it as no if you know you're never going to put two different varieties in each of your planting bins there on this. So we'll just leave this as no for now. This is if we use the factory supplied liquid fertilizer system, asking if we tend to use this or not. This system does not, or this planter does not have that system on here, so we will leave that as no. But if you do have the AccuControl system, or basically the planter control monitor is controlling your liquid fertilizer system, you'd want to select yes there. So here we can select our operator. Usually this will populate to what you have set already. I can also select my different operator there if I need to, or create a new one. And then if I do create a new one, I just want to make sure my units are set to USA, so that way it uses the correct inches, gallons, things like that, acres for my precision farming units there. So in this setup, we're going to be getting a field ready to go for corn planting. So we want to select our crop type as corn. And here we will do our grower farm field. So again, this is all dependent on your operation, but for this, I have it auto-populated. So my grower is myself. I have my home farm, and I call it the Northwest Quarter field there. If you need to edit it, you can just select in here, go through there, and select your grower and farm that you need to get to the right one. This is if we have a GPS receiver installed. Right now I don't have a receiver actually installed in the tractor, but I plan to hook it up here later this year, so I can leave this selected. So this is in a Magnum tractor, so I just want to leave this on Magnum roof, and when it does that, it will generate the dimensions for my offsets for me correctly. And then the connection type, depending on which receiver you're using, it can be either a CAN A, B, or an RS-232. In this case, we're using RS-232. So here you can see, since I did select this location, my forward offset is already populated. Remember that forward offset is basically on the non-steered axle. So for four-wheel or for front wheel assist tractors, that's off of the rear axle. So we are ahead 50 inches from the center of the rear axle. If this was an articulated tractor, that is based off the front axle. So it'd be how far ahead or behind of the front axle I am. So this is auto-populated. If you are running on a non-case tractor, you probably do have to put these offsets in manually. Left-right offset, again, since I'm using the factory mounting point, there's no left-right offset, but this is just to make sure my GPS, if it's off the center line of the tractor, I want to note it in here, otherwise it'll throw off my guidance and my mapping. So height, this one is not pre-populated just because of different tractor heights and tire configurations. So this one you actually want to measure to the base of your GPS receiver would be the offset you want to put in. So in this case, I did measure, it is 130 inches on the offset there. So again, since my GPS is not detected, it's offline right now, but here is where I could set up where if I'm using WAS or RTK, what my correction source is, as well as if I'm using a GPS radio and modem, or for my N-trip status and things like that. So since I don't have one plugged in, I just need to skip this step right now. So now I just need to verify this one's asking the number of rows in each section are correct. So I only have 2 sections in this planter, so I just want to leave it 6 rows and 6 rows for my 2 sections. And then here is where I'm verifying my row width. If you do have a split row planter and you're planting beans, for instance, you would have to put in 15-inch rows for your row width, so that way it knows the correct number of units that it's using. This one's asking for the bar distance. So this would be from the tractor axle to basically the seed tube, right at the beginning of the seed tube. I needed an accurate measurement of this distance, so that way it helps the most accuracy as far as my shutoffs go for my section control. If I'm off a couple inches, well then it's not going to shut off either too soon or too late, depending on that. So if I want an accurate shutoff, I really need a critical straight ahead measurement of basically the center of the axle to the seed tube. So this one depends if you have roll clutch control or not. This one does not have roll clutches on it, but if I did have clutch controls, it would be looking for that ECU, and that's what that fault was for. And then here I could select if I want a pneumatic or an electric type roll clutch on there. So again, this is based off of your planner's configuration. So I will select this back to no and leave it like that. But again, reference your planner's configuration as you're going through this setup wizard. And here we're also telling how the planner is equipped. So in this planner, I do have markers on there. If I didn't have markers, I'd select no. If I did have the liquid product being controlled by the planner module, I would want to select yes there, but since I do not have that, I leave that as no. Same thing with bulk fill. So if I had on-row seed, I would select no there. And if I had insecticide or anything like that, then I would select yes for this. So basically we're just telling the planner what it's built as and what it's supposed to look at. And then this one asks if I have bulk fill lights. I do not. I do have airbag control on here, pneumatic, so I leave that as yes. So work condition, I do recommend work conditions are basically preset settings for the planter. And work conditions, you usually see them if you're going through your Pro 700 for the first time. They have planting, tillage, seeding, things like that. That's the default, but I recommend creating a work condition for anytime you want to have settings saved that you want to come back to. So in this situation I have planting, but I want to make a new one and I want to call it plant, and I want to do corn. So that way all these settings that I go through are specific for corn planting, and I don't have to reload this same wizard every single time. I can just change my work condition to plant corn and it will save that information, which looks like this one already exists, so I will just select that instead. We'll go plant. I'll call it plant corn. We'll go 2. So you could save this as plant corn wet conditions, plant corn ideal conditions, and then you could have your different downforce settings already saved and ready to go. Or you could do plant soybeans. Again, it's critical. I think it's useful to use work conditions for each individual setup that you find yourself in through the growing season. So here, now that my work condition is selected, now I'm selecting my seed cal values. So this would be the number of cells in each disc that I'm using. So in this case, we're using a 48 cell corn planter disc. There may be some other ones, again, depending on bean, or if you're using the 36 cell corn value cell disc, you would want to stipulate that there. But I'm going to leave this at 48. Here's where I want to set my default bulk fill rate. So this is going to be basically when I start the planter up. This is the RPM or speed of my bulk fill fan that's going to default to at first. So 3200 is a good starting point. And then here is where I'm setting my vacuum pressure. So 18 inches of H2O or 18 inches of water. Again, this is where if you had maybe a work condition where it was plant corn or plant soybeans big seeds, where you could want to have a higher vacuum pressure, that would be already saved, so you wouldn't actually have to go in and manually change your vacuum pressure there. So I don't plan to intentionally overlap any rows. And my offset, I don't have any offset, but if we had it where the planter was offset of the center line of the tractor, that's where I want to put in left or right there, the inches of offset. Again, downforce control. So again, this is all saved under the work condition. So if I had to plant corn wet, what I could do is I could decrease that downforce control, and again, it will automatically save that value. So then next time when I want to go plant with it, I can just select that work condition and all of this will be set for me. But I'll leave this at 80 pounds as a good starting point. So here's all the calibrations that you need to do for the beginning of the season or the first time you run the planter. So this would be your distance cal, your frame cal, and your seed cal. I don't have any seed to run right now, so I can't do that one, but that we would want green check marks on all this before we actually go out to the field, so I'm going to skip that for now. And this is basically just telling me the same thing I just said, that I need to make sure I plant all this at once. For product, so the product, this is where I select basically my variety. So if you are going to do variety tracking or anything like that, this is where you want to enter your variety. So this one, I already have a bunch of varieties already entered. Here's the one that I actually want to plant with. So this is my variety there. The crop type is there. Here's my default unit rates. So I want to say my default units, I want 32,000 seeds per acre on this variety. Again, this is just going to be the default rate that I want to set there. Then I have my minimum rate and my max rate. Again, these can be adjusted as needed. So here I want to run 36 as my map, and I want 1,000 seeds per acre. That's the rate of change that I want. So I can, if I bump the rate up or down, it will change 1,000 seeds per acre difference in population. I'm going to say my minimum, I want to set that to 28,000 seeds per acre. So basically I'm just bounding the application rate on my planter. So here, if we had an additional product that we were applying, so say if we had the liquid system on this planter, I would want to select yes and then set that product up. And then that way, as I'm going through the field, I also will get an as applied map of that product so that I can use that for further data analysis later down the road and actually see what rate I applied. But since I have no additional products that I'm applying, I just select no here. Now we're setting up our overlap and shutoffs for the planter. So I want to have my overlap control on. Again, this is operator preference. Generally, I say 95 to 99% overlap is what I normally recommend. But as you get into the field, you can actually go and tweak this, and that's what I recommend, especially on that first field. Making sure that you actually get out of the tractor, look and see when your seeds actually stop and start. So that way you know your overlap settings are correct, or if you need to adjust them, you can adjust them as needed there. But we'll just leave it at 95 to start with. Percent out of bounds. So this is if I had boundary control. So if I had a boundary that I generated either from a previous map or anything like that, I could use that, which in this situation I do. So I'll turn my boundary control on. So that way if my planter, even 1 or 2 row units, goes outside that boundary, it will shut off the planter. Or I could go, let's say 80%. So 80% of the row unit or the section has to be out of the bounds before it will shut the planter off. Generally, I recommend leaving it at 10 to 15% for your out of bounds there. Depends on the correction source too that you use to create the boundary. If it was RTK, then you could actually probably run the 1% and just be fine. If it was WAS, again, WAS is 40 inches of movement around, so basically that could be 2 or 3 row units that GPS signal would adjust. So you may need to bump that up to 20 or 30% for that. Seed product delay. That's basically from the time the meter starts or I activate the meter to how long it takes it actually to drop the seed into the furrow. Again, this is a calibrated value, so I would recommend running that planter calibration every year for each seed product. So one for corn, one for soybeans, just to make sure that that delay is set. Again, this adjusts our offset and my shutoffs for when I want to start and stop planting. Then finally, I have a start early, stop late distance. Again, I can adjust this as needed, but if I wanted to, let's say I'm on my headland, turn around and drop the planter down, I will start 2.5 feet earlier. So basically be one row unit earlier while I'll start planting where I previously planted on the headland here. Again, I can adjust this as I needed. You can even go down to 0, or you can go all the way up to 25. Generally, we're going to be in that 0 to 3 feet range for our start early. And then our stop late is basically as I'm entering where I previously planted, how many feet I get into that boundary before I'm going to shut my planter off. Again, this can be tweaked as necessary, but generally that 0 to 3 feet range, again, is what we're normally going to do, again, depending on accuracy and the correction source. So now that was the full setup. Now, do I have to do that every time? No, I don't. And you can see I do have a couple of X's here. That's because this one, I didn't complete all my calibrations. If I completed the calibrations, that would have a check mark by it. And since my GPS, I don't have my GPS hooked up, I have an X there. So that way, now I've gone through the full setup, if I need to, say I hook my GPS up, I can just go here and it will pick me up just for the GPS setting right here. So instead of walking me through the whole thing, it will just walk me through the section that I need. So once you do the full setup with everything hooked up, you should have all the check marks here, and then you should be good and ready to plant. So then, let's say you go plant a field, or it's the next day or something like that, you're changing fields. Instead of running through this full setup again, what I can do is do the daily operation. So if I had all my conditions set up, basically it would just walk me through, okay, what grower farm field am I planting on, what variety am I planting, what work condition I want to do. It's a lot more brief and simpler because it's all based off of stuff you've already done, and tweaks the only things that you need to tweak by moving to another field. So that is the wizard operation. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us either at our Worthington, Lake Park, or Laverne stores, and someone there would be willing to help you out.